Want to relive your favourite PS2 games with high frame rates and resolutions on your PC? Well, this is the ultimate PCSX2 setup guide. I'll walk you through everything step by step, from installing PCSX2 to applying a 3-step rule to get your games looking and running great. And I promise not to waste any of your time, providing you with everything I wish I would have known when I first started using this emulator. So the first step is to go over to the PCSX2 website. Here you'll see right in the middle there's two options to download, the latest stable version and the latest nightly version. We're going to be downloading the latest nightly version, and the only reason for this is because this gets the latest new features. Just click download on Windows. Once the file is downloaded, you're going to need an archiving tool. I like to use 7-zip, so that's the one that's going to be linked down in the description. Once you've downloaded that, what you can do is right click the file that gets downloaded, click show more options, 7-zip or any other archiving tool that will be here, and then extract to. This will simply put all those files into an unzipped folder. Open that folder and then open PCSX2-QT. You'll be greeted with the setup wizard. You can select your language here and also the theme. I'm just going to use the default. Also, it's recommended you keep this ticked as well so you get the latest updates. Click next. Now, PCSX2 needs a PS2 BIOS in order to run games. Legally, you need to dump the BIOS from your own PlayStation 2 console. You can find guides online on how to do this, but we won't be covering this here. If you prefer to sell the 7 Cs, then Google is your friend here. I have a custom directory that I'm going to select here. I recommend you make a folder with these BIOSes in order to keep everything neat and tidy. Click refresh list here in order for yours to show up. Then click it and hit next. A great thing about PCSX2 is that you can select a folder in order for it to scan for any games that you put inside that folder. So I recommend you making a folder somewhere, maybe even on an external drive, and fill it with all of your backed up games. I've done so already, so I'm going to select that drive. Once you select the drive, you'll be asked if you would like to scan the directory. Then hit next. PCSX2 can actually be used with a keyboard, but I'm guessing all of you here, including me, are going to be using a controller, as using a keyboard is going to be a dreadful experience. Make sure your controller is plugged in correctly at this point, leave the controller type at DualShock 2 and click automatic mapping. Then select your controller here. If it isn't showing here, you may need to restart this process, but mine is showing here as an X input controller. Once you've clicked it, just click next, then finish. Now all of your games will start slowly showing up here. The default view here is the list view. It's pretty good, but what I like to do is click this button here that turns it into more of a gallery. You'll see that all of these games are imported, but none of their cover art are showing, so let's download those. You can actually right click each game individually and click set cover image, but I'm guessing a lot of you are going to have hundreds of these games and don't want to do that for each of them, so let's try to do it automatically. Click tools in the top here and then click cover downloader. We're going to need a URL in order for this tool to grab all the cover art, so let's get one now. If you search on Google PCSX2 cover downloader, then the first link will be the one that we need. This link to this GitHub page will be in the description. Scroll down to the PCSX2 setup and then you'll see that the URL link is here. You can also use this one if you'd like 3D covers. First we're going to copy the default one and head over back into PCSX2. Paste the link in the box, make sure to tick use title file names and then click start. It will start downloading every cover for your games. The only problem with this tool is that it won't do it automatically once new games are added. So what I recommend you do is get all your PS2 games into a folder and then run this tool. Now click close once it's done, and as you can see, all of my games now have cover art. Let's get into one of the most important things about this emulator, the graphics settings. Go into settings and then graphics. Let's go through the most important options here. The aspect ratio is by default set to auto standard. This is recommended because most PS2 games run at 4:3 ratio. This is going to have black bars on the left and right, but if you stretch it out to 16:9, then you're going to have a super ugly stretch display. My recommendation here would be to leave it at 4:3 to get that original experience, but if you really must have your screen filled, then 16:9 is the way to go here. Another two great options here are the apply widescreen patches and apply no interlacing patches. The apply widescreen patches does what it says. it applies the widescreen patch that may or may not be available for each game. My recommendation, however, is just to leave these two off and apply manually, but if you're really lazy and you just want the best experience, then just apply the widescreen patches one. This is going to make games fill your screen but not have that weird stretchy look that I explained earlier. Next, let's go over to the rendering tab. Here is arguably the most important setting of this entire emulator, the internal resolution. By default, this is going to be set to the native PS2 resolution. This resolution is usually 720 by 480, which, as you can imagine, if you're running on a 1080p, 1440p or 4K monitor, this is going to look super bad, so we want to change this. My recommendation here is just to set it to your monitor's resolution, so for me that's 1440p. However, if you're having lag in games, this is the first option I would change. 3 times and even 2 times still looks perfectly fine. I'm going to be setting it to 4 times native. The only other option that I recommend changing here is anisotropic filtering. All this is going to do is improve image quality by reducing texture aliasing. There's no downsides to setting this to 16 times that I've seen personally, so just set it to 16 times and forget about it. Texture replacement we're going to leave for now, but it's important to know what these menus do. Texture replacement is actually going to let you load modded textures, so you can apply 4K texture packs that the community have put together. One of the biggest use cases I've had for this texture replacement is Gran Turismo 4 and its HD resolution pack. Post-processing is another great tab. This lets you apply shaders on any of your games. I personally use Reshade to do this, but if you didn't want to download anything extra, this is a great way to give your games extra sharpening or apply TV shaders like CRT shaders. If your PC can't run higher resolutions, then a CRT shader plus really low resolution actually looks so good. For now I'm going to leave this menu. OSD and recording are nothing really special. Next, let's set up our memory cards. Click memory cards on the left here. Then if you want to, you can change this directory here by clicking browse. You could make a folder here close to your games and your BIOS folders just so that you have everything all in one place. Once you've selected the folder that you want to store your memory cards, click create. Give your memory card a name and then choose the size of your memory card. 8 megabytes is really good, but it obviously is small for today's standards. The best in the middle here is the 32 megabyte option, so I'm going to be selecting that. Press OK. Now that we have that, we still need to do one more thing. Right click the memory card and click use for slot 1. And as you see, slot 1 will go from missing to having your memory card slotted in. Now the network and HDD options are pretty useful if you're looking to go online, but for this tutorial we're not going to be touching these. In folders, you'll see that all of these different files are being put in your documents folder on your Windows drive. If this isn't ideal for you for whatever reason, then you can simply click browse on each one of these and make them their own folders in order to keep everything neat and tidy like we've discussed before. The achievement tab, you can turn this one on if you want. It's simply a gimmicky retro achievement database that tracks your progress in all of your retro games. If you're into that and want to do that, then click enable and it should all be set up just using the default settings. You do obviously have to have an account as well and be logged in. But for this video, we're not going to go too deep into this. Now click close and your PCSX2 is all set up. At this point, PCSX2 has already automatically mapped out controller buttons, but if for any reason you need to change anything about the controller, here's how to do so. Click settings, then controllers. Here, select the controller port 1 on the left. Here you can click any of these buttons and reassign them to different buttons on your controller. Say for example I wanted to change the triangle button, I would simply click it and then press the button that I want it to be set to on my controller. Then once you're done mapping this, you can also make a new profile and give it a name. Once you made your changes, you can close and continue playing your games. To get every game working perfectly on this emulator, I apply this 3-step rule. The first step is checking the game's wiki page to see if there are any issues reported and what workarounds would apply. Then step 2 would be checking to see if there are any patches for the game and its properties. We're mainly looking for a widescreen and/or 60 FPS support patch here. Then the third step would be to adjust the renderer and the internal resolution to best suit the game and your hardware capabilities. Let me show you an example of how I apply this 3-step rule with Ratchet & Clank 3. Right click and click Check Wiki Page. Here this will open a wiki page of the game in which you can scroll down and see all of the known issues that are in the game. So for example, lights not illuminating properly has a workaround of switching blend accuracy to full. So let me show you how you can do that. Let's double click the game to launch it. Then as you can see, sometimes in the top left, it'll give you recommendations on settings that you should change. This is a setting we're already going to be changing, so this isn't something we should worry about. Next, let's click settings and then click game properties. The reason we're choosing game properties here is because this means anything that we change within here is only going to change for Ratchet & Clank. Next, let's go graphics and then rendering. And here you can see the blending accuracy option. The wiki said that we should set it to full, so that's what we're going to do here. Another thing that we want to do after we've done this is click on patches. Here you'll see all the patches for the game. Some games will have more patches than others, but as you can see, this one has a widescreen 16:9 patch, meaning that if we click enabled, the game will set to widescreen as you can see in the background. Now you can click close and double click in order to full screen the game. As you can see, we have the game running now in PCSX2, and the great thing about this is that we can double click and then tinker the settings before we get to playing our game. Let's go to settings and then game properties and then push this to the side so that we can see the game. We've already fixed an issue using the wiki and we've also applied the widescreen patch, so we don't need to do anything there. But there is one thing that I glossed over in graphics that I'd like to get into now. If you click graphics and then see renderer, you'll see that the global setting here is Vulkan. Now Vulkan is the smoothest renderer out of all of them and has pretty good compatibility. But the one issue with Vulkan is sometimes things don't render accurately to how they looked on the PS2. So if we click this here and select OpenGL, this one is a little bit more accurate to how the PS2 originally looked. However, the biggest issue with OpenGL is it's a lot more taxing on your system. Some games though work extremely better with OpenGL than they do Vulkan, so it's best to use these on a case-to-case basis and see which one works the best for you. Another great feature is switching to software mode. Currently we are in hardware mode, which means it's using your graphics card in order to render the game. However, if we switch to this software mode by pressing F9 on our keyboard, you'll see that instantly the game comes extremely pixelated and blurry. This is rendering the game on your CPU, but this is almost 100% accurate to how the PS2 looked. Because it is so accurate, this software renderer is great for when you are getting visual bugs in your games. Sometimes the only workaround is to use this renderer. Obviously the biggest downsides to using this is the extremely blurry image that you'll get. But like I explained earlier, if we go into post-processing and then TV shader and put on a CRT shader, then this actually doesn't look that bad. This is pretty much how you saw the game as a kid. It's the reason that blowing up these PS2 images from 480p to say 4K on your monitor looks so awful. There's a certain magic that CRT shaders do in order to blend the pixels together and make them way more smoother looking. This shader is the extremely basic one that comes with the emulator, and there are a lot better ones out there such as CRT Royale. This one looks amazing but does have to be set up using Reshade. I hope this deep insight into how you can get your game running flawlessly on this emulator helped you a ton. And if you want to take it a step further and find out about remastering some of your older games using emulators, then you should definitely check out this video that not only explores that, but shows how easy it truly is. See you over there.